This is the Great Pyramid of Giza, a building so vast that if we employ 5,000 workers today with an unlimited budget, including helicopters and machinery, it would take us more than 5 years to build it. According to mainstream historians, this engineering wonder was a tomb. Yet, not a single corpse, artifact, or wall hieroglyph related to classical Egyptian tombs was found inside. I spent 2 months researching it and I finally revealed the elusive mystery of the pyramid's purpose. I used to work as an electrician with a background in civil engineering, and I can safely tell you the pyramid was a power plant that generated electricity and powered a whole city. We even calculated the voltage it produced. I know that sounds crazy, but once you hear the facts and see how we recreated a mini power plant pyramid, the idea of the pyramid creating electricity will seem more plausible than it simply being a tomb. There are numerous artifacts from Egypt's Old Kingdom, adorned with sophisticated gold plating, a process that typically requires electricity. Pair that with the earliest officially accepted use of batteries, which was more than 2,000 years ago, and things become much clearer. Many of you have already heard of the Baghdad battery, a 2,000-year-old artifact that consists of 2 components, a copper tube and an iron rod. When we pour vinegar into the jar, the liquid permits a flow of electrons between the copper tube and the iron rod. That produces an electric current. The Great Pyramid of Giza generated electricity in a very similar way, but rather than using iron, copper and vinegar, it took advantage of piezoelectric rocks, flowing water, hydrogen gas, and chemical reactions. Instead of blindly speculating any further, let's look at the building materials used in the Great Pyramid of Giza and explain what purpose each one served and how that produced electricity. The pyramids were once completely covered in white limestone. Limestone is the best everlasting electric insulator in the whole of Egypt. If the pyramid was a power plant, it must have been insulated so as not to leak any power to the outside. But the interesting part is the inner tunnels. These actually aren't tunnels at all. Dolomite was found on many inner surfaces within the pyramid. While it isn't a natural conductor, dolomite is a mineral that contains many metals inside of it, and when pressure is applied to its surface, its electrical properties change. For example, if you create pipes from dolomite and run pressurized water through them, they would free up electrons, and the friction would cause the pipes to release an electrical charge. The power produced would depend on the pressure of the water and the amount of metals in the mineral. But let's forget dolomite for a second. The inner tunnels of the pyramid were carefully covered with granite, and granite contains between 20 and 60% quartz, which is a very high amount. Quartz is a piezoelectric crystal, and piezoelectric crystals generate electricity when they are physically stressed or deformed. These crystals have the unique property of converting physical pressure into an electrical charge. This is how each time you shake your wrist while walking, your wristwatch equipped with quartz produces electricity to charge the battery. Keep in mind that the whole tunnels of the pyramid are covered with granite. In physics, there's an effect called spontaneous synchronization that scientists are still trying to explain, but it covers a wide range of topics. Women living together somehow synchronize their periods, pendulums in proximity to each other start to swing in unison, and even natural frequencies align when interacting with each other. The effect of spontaneous synchronization between a huge quantity of piezoelectric crystals under stress would be the production of enormous amounts of electricity. And if you look at the tunnels, despite the outside of the pyramid looking like one giant staircase, there are no stairs inside the tunnels. The reason is that these tunnels were not meant for humans to traverse, but for water and hydrogen gas to go through them under large pressure. If you enter the pyramid, the stairs you would see inside are wooden and created by archaeologists for their own convenience. These tunnels go under the pyramid and connect with an underground river, which I assume was most likely deflected to fill the tunnels with a switch. I've studied geology for only 1 semester, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are obvious signs of water erosion inside the lower portion of these tunnels. And many of you would say that during the dry summer month, the underground river would not be able to generate enough electricity to power the whole city. And you are correct. But look at this visualization. This is something we call the pharaoh's pump, and it shows how ancient Egyptians utilized heavy rocks to build up electrical charges, even when the river wasn't providing enough friction. Even if the whole pyramid isn't filled with water, this movement would produce sound waves, which also enable the piezoelectric qualities of quartz. All of this is very logical, but with just the pressure of the water and 8,000 tons of granite, ancient Egyptians wouldn't be able to power anything, and they would be able to power just a few households and not a whole city. So we're missing something. We're missing a vast chemical reaction. And we know exactly which one it is. But can we prove that such a chemical reaction took place in the pyramid? Actually, we can. When it comes to the Pyramid of Giza, mainstream historians often overlook a crucial building element, the gypsum mortar binding the pyramid stones. Modern engineers have struggled to replicate this enduring mortar. It actually is the key to the pyramid's longevity. It's capable of withstanding pressures far beyond what is necessary merely to support the pyramid. In fact, the heavy stones might remain in place without the mortar, and it is a mystery why the sophisticated ancient builders used it when there was no need to do so. But now we know why they used it. The civilization that built the pyramids needed to use such a strong binding mortar to hold the stones together. After all, a whole river was flowing inside the pyramid and forcing the granite blocks to produce electricity. But the mortar was placed to hold something else, something much more powerful than a river, an exothermic chemical reaction between zinc and hydrochloric acid. The gypsum held it all together, and the limestone insulated the surface, while the dolomite further increased the voltage produced with its free electrons. Now remember the Baghdad battery? The queen's chamber in the pyramid worked similarly. The north wall of the room contains traces of hydrochloric acid, and on the southern wall there are traces of zinc chloride. This is what sealed the deal for me. Those of you who've studied chemistry know that these two chemical compounds are the result of a reaction of zinc and hydrochloric acid. We've done that reaction at school during chemistry classes more than a dozen times. When you combine zinc with hydrochloric acid, you get a violent reaction resulting in zinc chloride and hydrogen. As a result, we get an insanely high amount of heat, and this heat would certainly force the produced hydrogen gas to expand even more. The more the gas expands, the higher it would flow to the king's chamber in the pyramid. The granite blocks there would get heavily compressed, the tunnels below would be sealed with water from the river, and the gas above would press on the granite blocks. And with each movement of the water inside, the gas would compress more and more. And remember the pharaoh's pump we demonstrated? That's what would move the water up and up, compressing everything even more. This whole tension would force the granite blocks to produce electricity. On such a massive scale, with 8,000 tons of granite, we can easily calculate the voltage this pyramid could produce. There is between 20 and 60% of quartz in the granite, and 1 cubic centimeter of quartz can produce up to 12,500 volts, and 8,000 tons of granite contain roughly 1,000 cubic meters of quartz. This means if used correctly, the pyramid could produce up to 12.5 million megavolts. In the alternating current electricity that we use today, such a high current can probably be used to transport electricity to another continent, or even another planet, if needed of course. That is if the building doesn't explode, but I guess they figured it out since it's still standing. Most likely this power plant was never used to produce such a high voltage. Many people believe the pyramids were some sort of a communication device between planets, but for me, that's a bit far-fetched, and I believe it would have exploded under the voltage, to be honest. And since quartz crystals produce a high voltage but a very low current flow, they're perfect for powering something nearby but not very far away. A lot of this energy would be lost, but it would still be enough to power a city or two. If these ancient builders were so advanced to power a whole city with electricity, wouldn't have they used copper instead of ionized air as a conductor? Didn't they know metals conduct electricity even better? Probably you don't know this, but in 2005, ancient copper and zinc wires were found in one of the Great Pyramid's hidden chambers. Although these wires were stolen by the infamous Zahi Hawass, whom everyone hates, we have pictures of the copper wires, and we know their purpose. The plausibility of this theory hinges on a crucial component: a battery capable of containing some of this immense power. Could an ancient civilization have constructed such a battery, and more importantly, have we discovered any evidence of the existence of such a battery? I know this will come as a shock, but we've uncovered not just one, but 20 ancient Egyptian batteries, each weighing over 100 tons. And they were right next to another pyramid, 15 miles away from Cairo. Let's explore how they function. The Serapeum of Saqqara is just 15 miles away from the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it is a much older and smaller pyramid. 100-ton sarcophagi have been found inside of it, and all of them have been created from the same material, a rare granite that was dragged there from 500 miles away. These boxes are so large that they cannot fit through the tunnels and doors that lead to the Saqqara pyramid. They were brought there, and then the pyramid was built on top of them. There isn't an electrical engineer who doesn't know that a battery container should be made from a uniform material. Ideally, from the same block of granite in this case. This uniformity ensures that the electromagnetic field remains stable and uninterrupted, preventing any potential leaks. This means if such a battery sarcophagus was cracked in the process of its making, despite having been transported for over 500 miles, the ancient builders would throw it away or repurpose it because it wouldn't be suitable to become a battery. In one of Egypt's museums, we discovered an unfinished sarcophagus made from the exact same material, and it had a small crack on its exterior. This discovery further supports our theory. Given the substantial size of these battery boxes, which are large enough to accommodate 20 people, mainstream historians have suggested that perhaps they were intended to be sarcophagi that honor the remains of bulls and horses, cherished by the royal family. The idea of constructing a pyramid for over 50 years to eventually entomb an ox that would only be born 4 decades after the start of construction seems, I don't know, rather implausible. The only problem here that doesn't support our theory is that the batteries we found are 20 miles away from the pyramid. There are two options here. Either the batteries were made for another power plant, or the energy traversed the distance on a power grid through the whole city and ended up there. This makes more sense since the energy would flow through a grid, get used, and what reached the endpoint would get stored in the batteries and later traverse in the opposite direction through another grid. Now, to empirically prove this pyramid power plant theory, I built a mini model of the pyramid with the exact proportions of the pyramid of Giza. Let's see how it works. This is my mini organ pyramid, a copy of the pyramid of Giza. Since a small amount of water cannot create the necessary friction to produce electricity, I can't replicate the river flow through it. Because of that, I used epoxy resin that would entrap quartz crystals and metal shavings inside. After the epoxy resin cures, the pyramid will be ready. Influenced by the temperature changes in the room, the solid resin would expand and contract, and this would cause friction and stress inside the quartz crystals just like the hydrogen gas would inside the pyramid of Giza. And that would produce electricity. The epoxy resin would also act as the limestones the ancient civilization used to insulate the whole thing. If I wanted to direct the current, all I needed to do was to stick a copper wire inside of the pyramid. Now, if the whole system is insulated and there isn't a conductor to point out the electricity, it would naturally flow toward the form's apex and its center of mass, which is 1/3 of the height of the pyramid. Strangely enough, this is where the king's chamber is located in the Great Pyramid. This means pre-Egyptian builders had extensive knowledge of geometry and electricity. And on the apex of the Great Pyramid, according to ancient Greek historians, there used to be a golden peak that would channel the energy. Before the experiment begins, it's good to mention that electromagnetic fields preserve organic material from decaying, and they can also sharpen or dull a metal razor, depending on where it's pointing, of course. So this is a good way perhaps ancients have tested their devices, so that's how we're gonna test ours. I aligned my pyramid to the north. This way it can enhance the electromagnetic field of the earth. I placed half a fruit over the pyramid and the other half over another object close to it and let them rest. The conditions remained the same for a few days. This will tell me if the experiment was a success, because if the pyramid was producing or enhancing an electromagnetic field, the fruit on top of it would remain fresh for longer than the other piece. And unsurprisingly, this was the case, and you can clearly see the difference between the two fruit halves. I've conducted this experiment more than 10 times with the same results. You can test this at home without any tools, or you can buy an EMF meter. It doesn't matter, the results are the same. Follow my instructions in the pinned comment below. Some of you might ask, why I didn't test this with an EMF meter? Well, because I don't have one. But there are plenty of videos on the internet you can watch with people testing with an EMF. And it works. The Egyptian pyramids are aligned to the north for the same reason I aligned my Oregon pyramid as well. That way, the electromagnetic field will pass through the pyramid perpendicularly, which means it will not glide on its sides and instead converge into its apex. All pyramids across the whole world are oriented in the same way. Now that we've got this covered, let's do one final thing to completely defeat the nonsense theories of mainstream Egyptologists like Zahi Hawass. He was already indicted for stealing, yet the public continues to believe him instead of genuine researchers interested in the truth. To seal the deal, we must disprove the extremely ridiculous idea of pyramids being tombs. No other Egyptian tomb has doors, and the pyramids have not only doors but evident entrances. These entrances were most likely used to insulate the electric currents with lids, and through these openings people entered to maintain the power plant if needed. As we said, the tunnels don't have stairs, they are not meant for people. Not a single corpse or mummy was found inside the pyramids as opposed to legitimate Egyptian tombs, which were all full of artifacts, gold, and mummies. The building materials, however, were very carefully picked for the pyramids to work as power plants. On the other hand, Egyptian tombs were mainly built from whatever was nearby, which was limestone. Limestone is one of the most abundant materials in the area. It would make more sense to create the tunnels from it. That is to say, if the tunnels didn't serve another function, of course. Which they did, and we know they served the function of a power plant's inner conductors of water, gas, and electricity. So mainstream history would have us believe these people carried 8,000 tons of granite to build the tunnels for no apparent reason. Don't get me wrong, the bigger part of the pyramids of Giza are built with limestone, and it is logical for them to be, but the 8,000 tons of granite used as building material for the tunnels are what gave the mystery away. The pyramids are a power plant. I can't wait to hear some of Zahi Hawass' cult followers to try and prove this theory wrong in the comments. The arrogant thought that we were the only intelligent civilization on the planet is what holds us back from finding the truth. Another super interesting pyramid is the one in Bosnia. It was discovered in 2005, and it turns out it is much older and larger than the pyramids of Giza. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is 30,000 years old. There's almost no information online, so I decided to travel there to enter its mysterious tunnels with an experienced archaeologist guide. Don't miss the video.